We talk about non-attachment in this tradition a lot, but we think of it as some word in a book. It's not. It has to do with you. It's a personal affair. It's a personal relationship with tendencies that you have, the person you have. When something is simple, we doubt it. We have reached a state in our humanity, in our thinking, that we start doubting when something is simple. We're looking for something complex, complicated, for us to kind of give it the benefit of, maybe there is something to this. You can't get any simpler than feeling. No wonder Lord Buddha chose the Brahma Viharas, because they're all about feeling. And we all can feel. Now, many of us have these protective measures. We owe it to our childhood. Each of us have been wounded. I'm in a, privileged position to get to speak with each of you and get an idea. Plus, before you, thousands of patients I've seen. And just myself, my own life. So I have rarely come across a human being, if ever, who has not been wounded growing up. And it takes special skills for a child to be raised in completely, I wouldn't say insulated, but with the necessary ingredients of a healthy human being, or a healthy human becoming. We must remember that metta teaches us to become our own father and mother to ourselves. We need to both mother and father ourselves. Our parents might have done the best job they could, perhaps. I know your faces are saying, no, they could have tried harder. But it is what it is, and now you're here. What are you going to do about it? We need to nurture, nourish, protect ourselves. But blocking the heart is not protection at all. The students who have actually grown, and I've seen them really blossom and just grow in leaps and bounds in such a short time, are the ones, and have been the ones, who are unafraid to touch that soft spot in their heart, to allow the opening. For that reason, we cry, we tear up. Some might even have an issue with that. I don't want to be crying. It's embarrassing. Why is that? Get over it. Tears are beautiful when you allow them to bring down those walls. The sooner you do that, the more willingness you have in bringing those walls down without putting up a resistance, fighting with it, the quicker you will actually taste the Dhamma. When a person was sitting there listening to Lord Buddha's Dhamma sermons, they gave it all. They gave it all. Remember I told you about the story of, I forgot the name, Suprabuddha? I forgot, it doesn't matter. Names, and plus I'm very, terrible with memory when it comes to names, things like that. Anyhow, but the gist of it, the meaning of it is what I find to be more important. There were a couple, husband and wife. They were so poor that they only had one single shirt and extremely poor. To the point where half the day, one of them would be wearing the shirt to go outside, and the other half of the day, the other one will go outside, wearing it. The man had to go and earn a few pennies, so he had to wear that shirt. But they were sharing that. That was their lifeline, if you will. Until Lord Buddha comes to town. And they're both listening to the Dhamma talks. Half the day she goes in the mornings, and in the evenings or in the afternoons, the husband, he would be waiting, itching for just like, okay, when is she going to come? When is she going to come? When is she going to come? And then she would come and he would just ask her a bunch of questions like, what did Lord Buddha talk about? What did any insights? He's curious. And then he would take on the shirt, he would just wear the shirt and go to the Dhamma talk himself to listen to the next phase of conversations or Q&A or questions and answers that Lord Buddha would be having with students. One night actually, in India, Lord Buddha is giving one of those talks and the husband is there. And Lord Buddha is giving the talk on generosity, dana. The king is there too. And his retinue, his generals, his ministers, they're all there, they're listening. So this was a big event. And he's sitting there in the crowd. And he's listening intently, and he's so moved. He has already given up stuff, things we hold on to. Non-tangible things. Non-tangible. You know which ones I'm talking about. The things that keep you awake at night. The things that you would give everything except for those. Your ideas, your concepts. How things are supposed to be working for me, Bhante. Those things. So he had given up all those things, plus it came down to that one single shirt that he was wearing. He said, I have to give this to Lord Buddha. I have to make this offering. I have nothing else. This is the only thing I have. And he's about to take off his shirt and he's completely naked. And he says, wait a minute, my wife, what are we going to do? I can't make this decision without her. It's her life too. And then his sadhana is so strong. He says, my wife, she loves the Dhamma just as much as I do. I'm sure she will agree. Perhaps she also was struggling with the same question as I am now. Maybe she was also wanting to give the shirt to Lord Buddha herself. And then he says, that's it. He takes off the shirt, folds it, and brings it and places it in front of Lord Buddha. And he says, I vanquished it. I conquered it. I won. I won. And he screams. He says, I won! The king is sitting there, is looking at this man, this frail, naked, perhaps even dirty somewhat, malnourished man. And he says, who is this? And what did he win? What is he talking about? And his guards go and ask the man, interrogate the man, and they find out who he is. And they come back to the king and they say, Lord, this man had nothing. They live in a shack outside the village, he and his wife. They only had one shirt, and he gave it to Lord Buddha. And everyone is moved. And we're moved now, right? 2,600 years later. Giving up is so essential. But the worst of them, or the most hardest things to give up are our ideas, our perceptions, our concepts. You have given up a lot to be here today, this week, this 10 days, 9 days. But that's not enough. You must tell yourself that's not enough. When you sit, you are giving up so much. You're giving up your shirts, metaphorically. Many of your mental shirts, you're giving them up. Things that you hide behind. And if you want to go deeper and deeper into the Dhamma, to taste the Dhamma, to be one of the noble ones, you must give up your fears. Your fears. Yes, those are things that we must give up. Disappointments. And that's another reason why I always insist on having you write, journal, because sometimes you might not even know what they are, but you know there's a blockage. The moment you're trying to go deeper, suddenly something stops you. The body starts jerking, the body starts having pains. It has to manifest. It has to manifest somehow. There's a fancy term we use in psychotherapy. It's called psychosomatic. The mind affects the body. Soma means body. The mind is affecting the body. There's no physical symptom at all. It's just the internal blockages that will manifest in the form of pain, numbness, or restlessness. Or the other one, giving up control. We don't like to give up control, especially if we've had a, successful life, have gone through things and obtained certain things. It doesn't have to be necessarily monetary success, financial. It could be, of course, but it could be other forms of success. But we know that they came by to us through effort and control. And we bring that into the Dhamma. We bring that into the cushion. Hey, it worked in all my other aspects of my life. Why shouldn't it work here? Many people will look for a tradition that actually will support that mindset. Their rigid stance, posture. And even within this tradition, within Buddhism, you do have traditions like that. It's very stern. The warrior's position. I used to practice that. I am not going to name names of the tradition, but you probably know what I'm talking about. But giving up, to me, it has always moved me. The suttas, especially such an example as this human being who lived such a long time ago, but he was struggling just like every one of us. Sometimes we forget. We think our problems, our issues, our hang-ups are unique to us. It worked for every other arahant, okay, Bhante? It worked for every other sotapanna. I just don't have the necessary, you put whatever you want to put in the blank. I don't have the necessary kamma, I don't have the necessary intelligence, I don't have the necessary ingredients or childhood. I had a very tough childhood, Bhante, or I've had very bad relation. All of these things. They're simply blocking you. But you must understand what they are and learn the art of meditation. Art because it requires you to learn a new language, your own language. You're the most interesting person in the universe. Do you know that? You are. For you. You must be. But Many of us will never get to see that. We'll never know that because we never actually looked carefully. We believed things that were not true. And for that reason, feeling is extremely important. That's why I always come back to metta. It is the most sublime feeling, because it also takes you all the way to upekkha, which is even higher, but it's so subtle. But your ideas have to be dropped. You have to trust. This path is all about trust, and this man trusted. And by the way, in case you were wondering what happened to him afterwards, the king says he did what? He had what? And he gave that up? And his wife is naked at home? He says, quickly, give him some of my robes. Brocades, golden, all kinds of fancy saris and things. They just cover the man up with that. And then he says, go to his hut, get his wife, give her, obviously, clothing, and get them both nicely dressed up and take him to my palace, both. He is going to be my new finance minister. Finance. Because this man would never steal. He had so much sila, plus he knew what the spirit of dana is all about. Money means nothing to him. Possessions means nothing to him anymore. That is a diamond quality to have in a person. But how did he obtain that quality? By giving up. So constantly give up. There's a term, a phrase that I learned from Bhante through his works. Adana, upadana, patinisagga. Adana means picking up. Upadana, you might know, grabbing. Patinisagga means giving up. The image that I always get is you might have had floods or seen floods on TV where you have a whole community of people gathering with and filling up sandbags. And then you have a group of, it doesn't have to be that image, it could be anything else, where people are passing something to each other. They're standing really close to each other. And they pass a sandbag or whatever item. Adana patinisagga. Adana patinisagga. Unfortunately, what we do is adana, upadana, and I'll see you later. We never do patinisagga. Our impressions. If I ask you who hurt you in 5th grade, let's say, what was their last name? You would also give me their address. Who insulted you 17 years ago? When you were here, there, whatever. You remember that. It left a tattoo, a mark on you, in your psyche. What is that? Adana, upadana. Patinisagga never comes into the picture. So giving up is not just a material giving up. It is wholly giving up, completely giving up. You're doing it all the time. Perfect example, your breath. You're breathing in, breathe it, breathe it. Can you keep it? You can for a while, until you notice this is unnatural. You have to give it up. So give up your ideas, your concepts, your projections as to what it is going to be giving you this retreat, what life is supposed to give you, what the Dhamma is supposed to give you, your disappointments in others. your hurt, your pain. Give them up. They weren't yours, you know. You made them yours. You made them yours. And the best example is the six sense doors, the six sense spheres. Your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. Whatever you pick up from them, please don't keep them. They're doors. They're swivel doors, in fact. They're like those doors that in some hotels or in some airports you walk through. It's a circular door. You don't know where it starts, where it finishes, where it ends. Walk through it, because that's what they are. Don't keep them. And the biggest one is the mind. Remember that. I keep telling you, the mind is the worst, because it holds on to ideas, impressions, things that are dead, have been dead for ages. So adana patinisagga. Bring that into your practice. How much am I holding on from my previous sit now in this sit? Can you ask that question of yourself? Because that's going to be torture for you. Because you're now, especially if you've had a fun time, if you had some good experiences in the previous sit, now this will be torture, because now you're going to try to mimic that new sit. Because, hey, it's not happening. How come? Maybe I should try harder. The worst thing you could do. The worst thing you could do. So even give that up. Give that up. Give everything up. I know I have some questions here. Should I start with the questions today? I know some of you are like, yeah. Okay. I guess there aren't that many new ones, so that's good. We'll try different. We'll start. Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya Bhante. Yesterday evening, during the Dhamma sharing on Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya Sutta, Bhante briefly shared about devas, some of them who have attained the 4 stages of stream winners. 4 stages of stream winners. Some of them are Arahant devas. Oh, you mean the 4 stages of awakening. Some of them are Arahant devas. How come when they become Arahants, they are still devas and not cease to exist? No more becoming. Becoming an Arahant is not the kiss of death. When a person becomes when a person becomes an Arahant, they don't die. It's not like, that's what I meant, like kiss of death. Like, you know, when you become an Arahant, it's like, okay, sorry, now it's time for you to die. It's not like that. It's just so happened that in the past, people like King Suddhodana, Lord Buddha's own father, when he was dying, when Lord Buddha was giving him so much Dhamma during those days, that he moved up the stages from a Sotapanna all the way to Arahant. What a fortune, great fortune is that, huh? Your son is the Buddha, Buddha himself, and he's there teaching you the Dhamma. He's basically not going to allow you to die almost until you become an Arahant, and he dies. So we have examples, but they are not, not that many. So the mind might think that when a person becomes an Arahant, they will expire, but that's not the case. The person can live for many, many years. Now, in the case of a deva, they live for a very, very long time. Their normal lifespan. The closest devas to us, human realm, it's about 500,000 years. Human years. That's their average lifespan. This is the closest we have to us. Chatu Maharajika, the 4 great kings. Now that doesn't mean that every one of those devas will live the full length of the 500,000 years. Just like in human years, we have a rough estimate, right? We say, well, roughly the person's going to live as a human, if they eat well, this and that, from 75 to now even 130 years possibility. That doesn't mean that every human being is going to live even 75 years. I know many people who've died in their 20s. So even as a deva, the deva might live for a very short period of time, because that also has to do with their own merits, their own karma, their vipakas. Sometimes you hear about a very rich person, born in a very healthy family, including them, they're very healthy. Handsome, this, that, so much money, prestige, celebrity status, and boom, something happens and they die. Paul Walker, there was an actor a few years ago. He, top of his, in his industry, and everybody wanted to have him as the actor of their film and this and that. So he was making so much money, he had everything. But nobody knew about this at the time. But he was such a benefactor. In secret, he was involved in doing some very pro bono work. So he had a company, not bearing his name, that they would have these tractors and things and to go and help out people and communities in disaster areas. Hurricanes, earthquakes, this and that. And he would, from his own money, he would provide all those out of pocket, and he would also provide them with the food and help these communities. And no one knew about it until he died, because he had made it. But he died young, that's what I'm trying to say. And then you hear about children who die, being born in a very wealthy family. So I'm giving you these examples so you know that as a deva, it doesn't mean that you're going to live the full length, for a long time. But generally speaking, they would. In that case, if the deva was just a youth, and they usually are reborn or reappear as youths, like in teenagers, like 16, 17, 14-year-old hour. They don't come out of a mother as a product of a sexual intercourse. They appear to a mother and father. So it's a role, it's a position that the person is reappearing into. Just like think of a prime minister or somebody who gets, somebody is there, their term is finished, and another person comes and you go into their office and there's a new face, somebody new, is a new prime minister. It's the same thing. Think of it like that. So many of these devas, they will become arahants while they're in their prime. Well, they still have a long life in front of them. And I just gave you the example of 500,000 years. So that, actually, I have to correct myself. No, that's it. Yeah, that's true. So in the case of a deva who's an arahant, but is going to live a lifespan that is several mahakalpas. Brahma Sahampati, remember? From the Dhamma Sutta, the Brahma God from the pure abodes who came to Lord Buddha to encourage him to teach the Dhamma. He was not an arahant, but he was an anagami. Pretty close. By now maybe he is an arahant, who knows? Because you can also become an arahant in those realms, because your heart just lives for the Dhamma. You don't care for those pleasures. They don't mean anything to you. Your viraga is so strong. Your disenchantment is so strong. Nothing could shake you. So I hope that sheds some light on the deva part. Because when a person becomes an arahant, unless they're sick, they're about to die, or something happens, like in the case of Venerable Bahia, he just was struck by a cow and its horns, and he just become an arahant. So he died, and that was something that he got from the past life. And he had also a few other friends of his who also died the same way. Probably it was the same cow. So, dear Bhante, do you know of any temples or facilities or colleges where I can study Buddhism academically for free? Now it is, we have so many resources for learning the Dhamma, unlike in the past. There are, I have seen them in the past, universities like Siba, in Kundasala, in Kandy, in Sri Lanka, in other places. I know Sri Lanka, they have several universities. Peradeniya is another one, very famous, that they do have programs that you could study. And the reason why I said today is much better, we have much better resources, because you don't necessarily have to have a degree. You don't. You can study. You have so many resources. Just give, have a lot of time for you to sit there during the day and say, I'm going to study the suttas, or I'm going to learn Pali, or I'm going to delve into this area, history of the Dhamma. There's so many resources, so many. Without the academic thing, because academia is overrated. It's very overrated, and this is coming from someone who spent over 40 years in that world, education, this and that, 40. Since I was like, I used to do a lot of self-education and then jumped into colleges at a young age. But it's like, why? Academic degrees, is that it? You can do much more than that without having that restriction, because there's a lot of red tape as well, bureaucracies you have to deal with. Now, I'm not minimizing getting a degree if that's your goal, of course, go ahead, do it. Get your doctorate if you want, PhD. But the academic world is not geared towards the practice of the Dhamma, and the Dhamma is all about practice. You will be getting into headbutting contests with them. You will be locking horn with them. You will be arguing with individuals, debating a lot. So it's not geared, the academia is not geared towards practice. You need to be aware of that. So if you're just going to learn the history and the suttas or understanding Pali, you can do that also on your own. That's what I'm trying to say, without having to pay a single penny. There's that option. But you have to do some research, I think. There are many online resources. You don't have to go and travel somewhere. Even some universities, as I was saying, have some distance learning programs they offer. Yeah. Two more. Dear Bhante Candana, on the spiritual friend, once I have established the metta and radiated to the spiritual friend, how long do I continue radiating to her or him? Well, hopefully it's, if you're a female, you're doing it to her. If it's your male, you're doing it for him. So that's unless there's attraction, which is, don't do that. And how should I integrate vipassana, introspection exercise? This is already, I'm feeling heavy. The paper is getting heavier in my hand as I'm reading the question. There's a lot of stuff the person is bringing in. Don't. The reason why I had the interviews with you is to make sure that you follow the instruction clearly without adding anything. And I see here, well, the radiating and radiated to the spiritual friend. That's not in the past tense. That should be your answer already. When you have the metta, you are constantly radiating, constantly. The candle, when you light it, it doesn't say, okay, I light up, okay. It doesn't. It continues being a candle. Stop being a candle and say, okay, now what? This is trying to control. Trying to control. Okay, then I will add the vipassana ingredient here, right, Bhante? No. Do the practice, Vipassana is not something that you do. It happens if you're doing it right from the start. What is Vipassana? It's penetrative. Penetrative. But if your eyes are shut, blind, you can't see anything. You can't pretend to be seeing. Insights happen on their own. You have nothing to do with them. You just have to prepare the ground, and that is what metta is doing. Humility is necessary. Adana patinisagga. So stop bringing in other stuff into the practice. Otherwise, just leave. Just go. Continue doing whatever you've been doing because you've been getting the same results that you've been getting. If you do this right, you might actually become a Sotapanna. You know that? In this retreat, you can. Why do you think I'm here? You can. That's how powerful the Dhamma is. But you must allow yourself to give up. Give up these nonsensical things that you believe in, you will hold on to. Enough. I think that answers your question. People think that I'm angry sometimes. It comes across as such. I guess I'm passionate when it comes to this. Okay, it's a very short one. Why am I seeing a pool of black dots? You're sleepy. Go get your eyes checked. I don't know. But usually it's sleepiness. It could be other things too, of course, but usually on retreats, when you're not getting enough sleep, you're tired, and you're exhausted, there's not enough blood circulation. That's why you have to walk. You have to go up and down stairs. Get the calf muscles activated because they will pump blood into your heart. Sitting too much. That's why I'm not a big advocate of go ahead and become a rock. No rock became an arahant, right? I was saying the other day. So move the body, but take your mindfulness, your sati with you everywhere you go. Simple, but not easy. I haven't forgotten. Thank you for reminding me. So today we actually have the same protagonist, the same individual we had yesterday for the other talk. And it was not intentional, but I was saying, yeah, that sutta will go well on this day. That will be good on this day. Because I'm also thinking how to help support your challenges and while you're being challenged by whatever it is on the third day and the fourth day. So the suttas are there to augment, to help support you. And saddha is a big part of it. But you have to relinquish your wanting to control. Your disappointments. Leave them out. Adana patinisagga. When you smile, you let go. You know that? You're letting go of grudges and having issues with the past. It's also forgiveness, like when we were children, when we would have arguments and things, people would say, adults would say, okay, now make up, now shake hands and just make up. Finally you would, and then what happens? The key factor that indicates that people have made up a smile. When there was a natural smile between the two, you know that, okay, it's deflated now. The issue is gone. Now, the academic approach that I see here going on with the note-taking, minimize that, please. You're not in an auditorium. You're not in a classroom because you're not here mentally. If you're writing, you're not here. You're too tight. You're too stern. You're too calculating. So cheer up. Put the notebooks away. Plus, it's being recorded. I used to take notes too, but they weren't being recorded. But still, I realized, what was that he said? What was, I can't talk to anyone. Everybody's in it, everybody's meditating, everybody, while listening to the Dhamma talk. But then I felt so foolish. Whatever, see, I was doing adana, upadana. I was trying to hold on. Oh, let me grab that. Oh, that was so juicy Dhamma right there. I missed, oh! If I had a notebook, I would have written it down. Oh, what is that? So that becomes Dhamma in itself, so long as there's sati. Catch that in you. Whatever I say right now, when I said that, put the notebook away, did that jolt you? Did that hurt your feelings? Look at that relationship you have with that feeling. It has nothing to do with the other person, with Bhante, with this or that. It's just mind and mind objects. That's all. That's what's happening. It's sannyas. Remember, sannyas are in charge. Yesterday, someone had asked, Gahakara Kaditosi, who is this Gahakara? Who is this house builder? Sanya. Yours, not someone else's. Yours. And if you need to conquer anyone, that's it. Overcome anything, that's it. Because you worship. You have an altar, not for Buddha in your home. You have an altar for your concepts, your sannyas, your memories. That's what you worship. Sanyam saranam gacchami instead of Buddham saranam gacchami. That's what you do. Think about that. This is from the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 37, Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya Sutta. Shorter discourse on the destruction of craving. Majjhima Nikaya is the middle-length discourses. Let's begin. I have personally heard this. At one time, the Blessed One was living at the Pugba monastery in the palace of Migara's mother in the eastern part of Savatthi. I can't miss that one. I have to mention, unless you know. Do you know about the Pugba monastery or Migara's mother? Oh, okay. There was I mentioned to you in the past about Visakha, the female, very, very wealthy benefactress. There was Anathapindika, the male benefactor, and then there was the female benefactress. That was Visakha. Very, very wealthy, with many children and many grandchildren. So, but before she became a mother, she was a young girl, and she had been impressed so much by Lord Buddha's teachings. And but she was young, and she came from a very wealthy family, so her parents had arranged, for her to marry someone who was not respectful towards the Dhamma. So she refused, put up a big fight, and then finally she accepted, so long as they would allow her to have a group of elders to be with her in her own palace, to be living, so that she would have like advisory board or somebody or group of people that are respectful and can hold a decent, because she knew that she was going to get into trouble with her in-laws. And lo and behold, it does happen. So her father-in-law says, when there's a group of monks coming, I'm shortening the whole story, but basically there were some bhikkhus who came for Pindapada. And she, being a devout follower of the Dhamma, she wanted to offer food every single time. And her father-in-law would obstruct her. and she would want to offer the best food, he would obstruct her, scold her. And one time she says to the bhikkhus, you must forgive me, forgive us, Bhantes, because my grandfather is living off of yesterday's food. Yesterday's food. The father-in-law gets so upset. He's rich, he's Brahmin family, wealthy, he eats the best biryanis and in a golden bowl. Who are you telling me that I eat stale food? You? So he meanwhile is adding his complaints against her. So, and she also has a difficulty, let's say, following the rigid rules when it comes to the Dhamma. So, two other things which I'm forgetting at this moment, but anyhow, they say you need to now go to your family. Leave this house, you don't belong here. So they want to kick her out. And she says, the elders. I need to have those elders and I need their advice in this. Because they're elders, the whole community has to listen to them. It's a group of elders that was agreed upon by both families because they're both rich. So they have a voice. So the elders come in and they hear her story. And he says, the father-in-law says, this is what happened, you know, how could you say that? How could you say that? I'm eating stale food. And she says, when was the last time you actually did something good in this life? You are enjoying the fruits of your past actions in previous lives. That is your stale food. That is yesterday's fare, yesterday's food that you're enjoying today. You're not doing anything good. You're not having any generosity. You're just enjoying yesterday's food. When you look around at rich people, wealthy people, kings, queens, wealthy celebrities, they're enjoying the best and yachts and this and that, partying all the time, this and that. When was the last time that they actually did something good without the cameras? Where no one knows about them, like that actor I mentioned. He did it because, and he was doing it and he kept silent about that, quiet about that. How many people are doing that? So, again and again she points these things out to her father-in-law, and the father-in-law, realizing his mistake, fixes his robe and goes on his knees. And he says, from now on you will be my mother. His name was Vihara. So when we hear Vihara's mother, we're talking about Visakha. Visakha, his daughter-in-law, who ended up being his mother. So, Anathapindika had built the Jeta monastery, Jeta's Grove monastery, and because Visakha would love going to Lord Buddha all the time, almost every day, she and her daughters and grandkids, she would take her granddaughters with her and all that. So she got tired, I guess, one day. She says, I'm going to build one. Plus, Lord Buddha would visit her on his Pindapada. And then Lord Buddha had to watch, and sometimes it would be raining. They didn't have proper roads, so she goes and says, I'm going to build another palace here. So she builds the Pubba monastery. And that becomes the eastern Savatthi palace. So, now you know. So at one time the Blessed One was living in the Pubba monastery in the palace of Migara's mother, in the eastern park of Savatthi. Then Sakka, the king of Devas, approached the Blessed One, worshipped him, and then stood to one side and said, and when the Devas came, they would not come when they would not appear, rather, when humans were around. They would come later in the day, meaning very, very late at night or very early in the morning, when the energy is different, when people are not vibing out these, low frequencies, their chit-chat, it's annoying. The vitaka, vicharas, it's annoying. So the devas are functioning on a higher frequency, and they like quiet. And they don't like our smell. In the suttas, you hear them, you see them actually. They'd rather be 700 miles away from you than to smell a human being. It's not like they have anything against us, we just smell bad to them. The only time a deva can approach a human being is when you have the fragrance of Dhamma in your heart. The Dhamma in your actions, in your words. That is very attractive to them. They will cross the abyss to come to you. So, this is Sakka, touching the ground. He's a deva, he's the king of the devas. He's in Hinduism is Indra. Sometimes it's Indra, we recognize him. He's the king, the lord of the gods. He's the lord of the 33, which is a higher heavenly realm. Bhante, how do you briefly describe the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect, having reached the pinnacle of ultimate safety, that is, the goal of the holy life, and thereby winning freedom from bondage once and for all, the one recognized as the very best among both devas and humans? King of devas, the bhikkhu listens to the teaching that nothing is worth holding on to. Familiar? Nothing is worth holding on to. And when the bhikkhu carefully listens to how nothing is worth holding on to, then he directly and accurately knows all things. And when he accurately knows all things, then he thoroughly understands all things and his relationship to everything. And by directly understanding everything, whatever feelings he experiences, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, he directly sees how each of these are, in fact, impermanent and never lasting. By looking into and seeing their impermanent nature in this manner, the bhikkhu understands how each of these feelings fades away and vanishes. And this makes him disenchanted towards them. You have seen the nature of the feeling, because is there a feeling that stays with you unchanged forever? Even the most familiar feelings. I used to challenge my depressive patients, people who have depression, when they say, "Oh, I'm always depressed." Always? Really? Always? What's your favorite food? And they light up, "Pizza." What happened there? Where did your depression go? "Yeah, but I'm mostly depressed." See? Generalizations. Very simple example. What was that? That is the changing of the feelings, because feelings are coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, like your breath. They're never designed to be stuck in one note, in one aspect. The good feeling is not going to stay a good feeling. You find yourself lounging in the most comfortable chair, the most beautiful, covered sofa or bed. And you say, "Oh, I can live here, I can stay in this bed forever." Oh yeah? Let's try. Stay in the bed and don't get up for 3 days. That will be torture for you. Your back will start to hurt suddenly, even though it was the most comfortable bed in the world. Cost $100 million, I don't know. It will be unbearable. Hence, the feelings will change. The comfortable situation will turn into discomfort. But the thing which keeps us latching onto is our perception, our concepts, our attachments to that particular feeling among others. So we develop this loyalty towards it. But this type of a person is relinquishing his grip because he's seeing that, oh, you're changing. When you see this a lot of times, you develop disenchantment towards it. You become disenchanted. It's like, oh, again? Like, people say, let's say, you go on vacation, and you go to the same vacation area. Like in Los Angeles, for example, because it's relatively close to Las Vegas, everybody, when there's a long weekend, guess where they go? Either Palm Springs or Las Vegas. Why? I would ask. Oh, it's great, there's this, there's that. Yeah, but you've done it 24 times in a year. Like, why do you want to do it? Aren't you tired? The person is trying to recapture every single time certain experiences, certain feelings. It's ludicrous. There's no wisdom there. A wise person will say, okay, enough. It's like, but that's just a gross example, but we have feelings that we have the same relationship towards. Like, how many times a day do you get depressed? How many times a day do you blame your parents? Do you blame your situation? Or situations? Your upbringing? This is a kind of a bhikkhu who got tired of it. Tired of the stories we tell ourselves. Yes, I'm doing this because, silently, that's how we're thinking. You get tired, you get dispassionate about it. Okay, I'm done. When you look at Lord Buddha's example, or the Arya Savakas who left the home life and gone into homelessness, you're looking at a person who gave up because they were so utterly disenchanted with the life they lived. Remember I was talking about Venerable Anuruddha last week? Maha Sutta and Anuruddha, I gave the example. What made Venerable Anuruddha become Venerable Anuruddha? Why did he leave? Remember what Mahanama said to him, his own brother? When he was showing them the fields and the cultivation of the land, and you do this and you do that and then do this, and then it's like after months and months, and then he says, okay, that's it, right? He says, no. Next season we will have to do it again. And then we stop, right? No, we do it again. We do it again. We do it again. That made him extremely disenchanted right on the spot. He didn't waste time to prove him wrong, because he knew that he's right. He cannot be proven wrong, because that's life. The Dhamma is no different than your life. What is different is your unwillingness, or the problem is your unwillingness to see your life as the Dhamma, as having elements of the Dhamma in it, but you're not willing to see it or see them. By looking into and seeing their impermanent nature in this manner, the bhikkhu understands how each of these feelings fades away and vanishes, and this makes him disenchanted towards them. Living like this, he starts relinquishing his grip from holding on to anything and keeps giving up. Keeps giving up. It's a constant process. Your eyes are going to come and promise you something totally ravishing, totally beautiful to look at. Oh, different than anything you've seen before. The waterfall, this waterfall, this fruit that you're about to eat, it's incredible. This is unlike anything. Yeah, it's a mango. I've had mango before. Yeah, but this is a special mango. Look at the colors. Your senses are doing this all the time. They're promising you. It's actually not the senses, it's your craving that's wanting to see, to try it. Because you're bored. You want to get rid of the disenchantment until it becomes so loud that you no longer can do that. The jig is up. You've discovered the lies you've been telling yourself. Such a bhikkhu will be able to destroy craving. By not grabbing onto anything, thus he no longer becomes anxious, neither restless nor agitated. And by not becoming agitated anymore, he experiences the ultimate relief that is Nibbana. At that instant, the bhikkhu comes to know with his direct understanding, birth is now finally destroyed. The holy life has been fully lived, with its highest goal achieved. Now there is no more returning to any state of becoming. It's done. Becomes an arhat. It has a lot to do with you. Instead of looking around for the other factors to be right in order for you to somehow become an arhat, it has everything to do with you, not your situations or conditions. Sometimes I hear people blame their biology. Oh, my body's like this, or my legs don't, agree with me when I sit to meditate, or this or that. Or I have this heart palpitations when I'm sitting. All these things that we make up. This King of Devas briefly describes the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect, having reached the pinnacle of ultimate safety that is the goal of the holy life, and thereby winning freedom from bondage once and for all. No one can win your freedom from bondage. No one. Not even the Buddha. He cannot buy your freedom. But people have come up with ways where we convince ourselves that if I do this enough times, then I will. You look at different traditions, in Buddhism also, or in other religions as well, where if you do this practice 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000, this type of breathing, yogic breathing, then you will become an arhat. Or if you do this many prostrations, in some traditions within Buddhism, or if you do this type of offering 100,000, 110,000 times, you become an arhat, or you become enlightened. But people will gravitate towards that because they like it when there is some type of a physical doing, which can be convincing you somehow that I am really getting closer because I'm striving, I'm physically striving. That is so much easier than giving up your attachment to some concepts. So a person is willing to go on a pilgrimage throughout the Himalayas for the rest of their lives, rather than give up a concept, their attachment to things. That's how crazy human beings are. But remember that Buddha, that gentleman who gave up his shirt, which was far more valuable than any concepts you could have, because that was their existential. It had an existential meaning, purpose, that shirt. It wasn't just a shirt. So how many of us can actually relinquish, give up our concepts and our interpretations and our perceptions of the Dhamma? Why you're here, what you want to get out of this, etc. Then, rejoicing and being delighted by the words spoken thus by the Blessed One, Sakka, the King of Devas, bowed respectfully to the teacher, and after circumambulating and keeping him to his right, suddenly vanished from there. Now, at that time, the Venerable Maha, who was sitting close to the Blessed One, witnessing the entire conversation, thought to himself, I wonder if this Deva truly understood the words of the Blessed One. While rejoicing and becoming delighted and then vanishing away in that manner. It would be good if I go and find out for myself. This is Venerable Maha. He would go anywhere. Nothing could stop him. He was the best in psychic abilities, except for Lord Buddha. So he says, it would be good if I go and find out for myself whether he has indeed understood and thus appreciates what was stated by the Blessed One. So, again, just like yesterday, just like a strong and agile person would quickly extend or flex his arm, so too the Venerable Maha Moggallana disappeared from the Pubba monastery, the palace of Migara's mother, in the eastern park of Savatthi, as he instantaneously reappeared among the devas of the 33. Davatingsa heaven. Meanwhile, Sakka, the king of devas, was in the park of the single white lotus, enjoying himself while being entertained by an enormous crowd of heavenly musicians surrounding him. He vanished from Pubba monastery and quickly he was surrounded by his, in his kingdom, by his retinue, playing for him the 5 kinds of divine music. Don't ask me, I don't know what they are. On seeing the Venerable Maha Moggallana approaching from a distance, Sakka, the king of devas, quickly dismissed the crowd of heavenly musicians and began advancing towards the Venerable Maha Moggallana and exclaimed, "Welcome, good Moggallana! Come, most respected Moggallana! It has been a long time that you gave us the opportunity to see you by visiting us here. Come and please take a seat, for your seat is ready here." Then the Venerable Maha Moggallana sat on the prepared seat, while Sakka, the king of devas, sat on a low seat. And the Venerable Maha Moggallana said this. Kosiya, that was his name. Position is Sakka, but his name that he had from the past was Kosiya. And Venerable Maha Moggallana knew, because he would also know the person's past lives. So you cannot lie to Venerable Maha Moggallana or make up stuff. He will find out. He will tell you with details, things that you don't know about you. So, Kosiya, how exactly did the Blessed One briefly describe the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect? We too would like to hear his explanation to you. Could you reiterate what Lord Buddha said? I'm curious. Good Sir Moggallana, I am constantly busy with many responsibilities, with much work to do here, not only for myself, but a great deal needs to be done for the rest of the devas of the 33. Yet, good Sir Moggallana, as we heard the Blessed One's explanation, we grasped its meaning, while also appreciating and taking it to heart. And only then did we vanish immediately from the presence of the Blessed One. Remember, Sakka was a Sotapanna, although I have spoken to someone, another Dhamma teacher, and he said Sakka is Sakadagami. I don't know how he knows, but we see in the suttas he was a Sotapanna. So let's go with that, which is not bad, So he's a noble disciple. And Maha Moggallana knows that. Venerable Maha Moggallana knows that. But you see how he's kind of, avoiding. He's like, I got the point, Bhante, but I'm very busy listening to all this orchestra play for me the 5 kinds of divine music. But that's not how, it still continues. We'll find out. You see, dear Moggallana, Bhante Moggallana, in the past, there was a battle that broke out between the devas and the asuras. Asuras are the antagonists, the enemies of the devas. And they were later listed among the 4 lower realms. They're sometimes called demigods or demons sometimes. They're not the ones that are assisting people who land in hell, assisting in the form of punishing you by giving you all those, terrible, horrible things, to people who land there. They're not those. This is a different category of beings, asuras, and they are apparently, the legends say in the suttas, and in this case, the suttas like this, legends because whenever I've come across references like this to such a battle, in the past, so it's presented like that. So there is no historical something concrete you can hold on to, like in the time of this or that, or I've never come across that. That's why to me it's almost like legend. Even Lord Buddha describes sometimes the relationship of the Asura kings, and one of them actually gets taken as a prisoner of war. He gets defeated, so they take him and they take him to Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya. So anyhow, this is a different story. So anyhow, the Devas defeated the Asuras in that battle, and as a conqueror, on our return from it, and to commemorate the victory, I created the Vijayanta Palace. Now, the Vijayanta Palace has 100 towers, and each of these towers has 700 large rooms, huge chambers. And each of these rooms has 7 nymphs, maidens, females. And each of these nymphs has for herself 7 attendants in each of these rooms. Good Sir Moggallana, would you like to see the splendor of the Vijayanta Palace? The Venerable Maha Moggallana consented in silence, because his goal is not to see the Vijayanta Palace. You'll see what he'll do with it later on, but his goal is to teach Sakka a lesson. Because he's, like an eel wriggler, like trying to slip away from the point that Venerable Maha Moggallana came all this way for. Remember, Sotapanna does not mean, they reached the pinnacle of awakening. They still have many passions. And as Sakka, you have a lot of passion. You're surrounded by nymphs. Constantly. So, it's a trap. That's one of the reasons why Lord Buddha was like, don't wish for a rebirth in the heavenly realm. If you're smart, cut the whole cord. Just get out of the whole samsaric cycles. If you're smart, you get out. And then when I see people say, oh, I'm making this offering because I want to be reborn in the heavenly realm. Why are you doing that? Because it's easy, Bhante. So then Sakka, the king of Devas, and Vissavana. Vissavana happens to be one of the 4 great kings. He's the king of the Yakhas. The 4 great kings, or the Maharajika, we say, they are the ones who control the world, Loka system. So apparently he was there. Then Sakka, the king of Devas, and Vissavana, the great king, went to the Vijayanta palace, following behind the Venerable Maha Moggallana, because he's the bhikkhu, he has to walk first. So, on seeing the Venerable Maha Moggallana approaching in the distance, the nymphs of Sakka, the king of Devas, having gone outside to greet their lord, quickly rushed back into their individual rooms, embarrassed, because they saw Venerable Maha Moggallana coming. Much like respectful daughters-in-law in seeing their father-in-law approaching. So too, those maids living in the palace felt embarrassed as they went and hid themselves in their rooms, because it was no longer Sakka coming. And you have other examples in different suttas where a lord of in his position as a deva, whenever he would approach his palace, the maidens or whatever servants would rush out to greet them happily and joyfully that you've returned. And so too this is happening, but suddenly there is this different situation, because Venerable Maha Moggallana is there, and he's been there before, and he's a bhikkhu in robes, so they know better than to flirt around with their king, with their, So then Sakka, the king of Devas, and Vissavana, the great king, took the Venerable Maha Moggallana from one area of the Vijayanta palace to the next, as they proudly exclaimed, "Ah, look, good Sir Moggallana, look at the splendor of the Vijayanta palace. Gaze upon the beauty of this Vijayanta palace, Bhante." Meanwhile, Vesavana, the great king, kept saying, "This splendor is on account of Venerable Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya, having accumulated many merits in the past, to the point that even human beings, on seeing something beautiful and lovely, would immediately say, 'It is splendid. It must be the work of the Devas of the 33. You see it in poetry sometimes. Or when people express, "Oh, she looks like a Deva." "Oh, their house looks like a Deva realm," or something like that. In that culture, in that time, they used to say that. Don't cross your legs, please. So, legs. So, they would say Tavatisa, the land of the heaven of the 33. So we see how the Venerable Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya now enjoys and lives in this splendor as a result of the many wholesome actions he has done in the past. Very similar to what I was describing about Visakha's father-in-law, where she pointed out something very obvious. She said, "You're eating yesterday's food." So these guys are saying, "Oh, look at Sakka, he must have done some wonderful things to be able to enjoy this and build this and be the realm leader, the lord of..." What? Meanwhile, the Venerable Maha reflected, obviously these foolish non-humans are living in negligence. What if I were to arouse in them the sense of urgency? Samvega. Then the Venerable Maha used his psychic power by shaking the entire Vajrayanta palace, quaking and trembling it just by the touch of his big toe. Could you look at your toes? Just one, the big toe. He was using his big toe to shake the entire Vajrayanta palace with all its towers and all its occupants and all those people in there. And shook it, just with it. Becoming shaken themselves at witnessing this, Sakka, the king of Devas, the great king Vesavana, and the retinue of Devas of the 33 were left awestruck and amazed, as they showed their utter surprise by calling out, "It is just incredible, it is wonderful and amazing," witnessing the vast power of this ascetic who with such great ease is able to violently shake this mighty heavenly palace, and only with one toe of his foot. I don't know if you have earthquakes here in this part of the world, but in America we have, especially on the West Coast, in Los Angeles and California specifically, we have a lot of earthquakes. When they happen, it's like you're sitting in a shoebox, and somebody is violently shaking it. And in '94, I think it was, the chandeliers were going like almost about to hit the pendulum, like a pendulum. They were about to hit the ceiling because they were shaken so violently. The door was like this, going like somebody was, two people were pulling and shoving it. Things were falling, and there's a sound, strong, powerful sound. So one can imagine the kind of shake-up that Venerable Maha gave them. That can definitely bring in Samvega. When the Arahant teachers, or any Dhamma teacher, would give Dhamma talks to their students, when they're truly coming from a place of Dhamma, they will be fearless. Nothing will stand in their way. They will shake, they will tremble you, they will jolt you, they will take the chair from under you, metaphorically, sometimes actually the actual chair too. Shake it until they can knock some sense into you. That's what a teacher does. Well, unfortunately, we're living in a time period where people are expecting teachers to be soft, accommodating, this and that kind of nonsense. The teacher is always like that, but even the harshest teacher, if they're true teacher, Dhamma teachers, they will have that softness all the time. But they're fearless because they have to shake you out of delusion, out of ignorance. So they don't have any secret agendas. They are not after popularity. They don't want to become celebrity teachers. When Ajahn Mun would give a Dhamma talk, the monks would be terrified. They would hide sometimes. Like I was mentioning yesterday. He was fearless. And then he would scold, let's say, one or two monks one night. The next night, other monks would like, yeah, but I think he might pick on me again, or he might pick on me this time, or whatever. And then they would see a totally different Ajahn Mun, a different teacher. So kind, so loving, so caring, so tender. That was also Lord Buddha. He scolds left and right, if the situation requires it. They have to. The teacher is fearless. But what we have today is teachers panhandling, begging for attention from students. Yeah, I'll give you whatever you want. You want a soft-spoken, sweet-spoken, this and that teacher who's accommodating? Yeah, just don't stop being my supporter. Yes, money's coming in. Why should I risk that? That's what bottom line is. We have a lot of that today. But when you see a teacher who just doesn't care, but they only care about you and your own level of samvega, then hold on tight and don't let go until you become an arahant, because they're trying to guide you. If you have a teacher like that, go after that. It's a rare thing these days. The Dhamma is dying, the teachings are dying. It doesn't happen about maybe in 100 years. It's changing so drastically. But it only can survive in you, in your life, how you live it. And that's why, imagine, Venerable Maha Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya had to go all the way to the realm of the 33 to teach Sakka a lesson. I mean, he was an arahant, he didn't have to do any of this. Then, realizing the sense of urgency that was suddenly brought up, the Venerable Maha Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya turned to Sakka, the king of Devas, who was frightened and with hairs standing on end, said this to him: Kosya, how exactly did the Blessed One briefly describe the bhikkhu? So basically he's asking the same question again. Now that there's, you're shaken up a little bit, could you tell me again what Lord Buddha said? So, could you describe the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect? We too would like to hear his explanation to you. Good Sir Moggallana, I approached the Blessed One, worshipped him, and then stood to one side and said, Bhante, how do you briefly describe the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect, having reached the pinnacle of ultimate safety, that is the goal of the holy life, and thereby winning freedom from bondage? And once and for all, the one recognizes the very best among both devas and humans. And the Blessed One explained, King of Devas, the bhikkhu listens to the teaching that nothing is worth holding on to. Sabbe Dhamma nalang abhinivesaya. That's in Pali. This is also, this portion of the instruction we also get in the Paccālayamāna Sutta. This is a special teaching. Very special, because this was the teaching that Lord Buddha gave to Venerable Maha Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya himself that allowed him to become an arahant. This was very close to home for Venerable Maha Cūḷataṇhāsaṅkhaya. This was his way to become an arahant, to see the Dhamma, to penetrate. So he knew the value of this teaching. He's trying to check, Sakka, oh Sakka, are you getting what the value, the wealth of this teaching? Do you understand the depth of it? You could actually let go and you could actually penetrate to the core of the Dhamma if you were just to listen. Don't talk to me about palaces. What is wrong with you? You have the Lord Buddha as your teacher. So he's trying again. Hopefully, you could almost sense it. Hopefully that Sakka, by repeating the teaching that he learned from Lord Buddha, that he would penetrate and become a Sakadagami or Nanagami. Because that's another way that you can actually attain, by repeating a teaching you've heard to yourself or to someone else. The bhikkhu listens to the teaching that nothing is worth holding on to. And when the bhikkhu carefully listens to how nothing is worth holding on to, then he directly and accurately knows all things. And when he accurately knows all things, then he thoroughly understands all things and his relationship to everything. It's all about relationships. You want to do vipassana? Check your relationships with everything. Everything your eyes see, everything your ears hear, everything your nose touches, smells, everything your tongue touches, the tastes, your body touches. Check your relationship with them, especially your thoughts, your relationships to those thoughts, concepts, perceptions, beliefs, ideas, views, all of which are your fetters. And by directly understanding everything, whatever feelings he experiences, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral, he directly sees how each of these are, in fact, impermanent and never-lasting. Never-lasting. They're conditioned. Sankata. Nibbana is asankata, non-conditioned. It's not constructed. Your concepts are constructed, you know that, right? Your perceptions are constructions. So we need to let go of that. Don't worship them. By looking into and seeing their impermanent nature in this manner, the bhikkhu understands how each of these feelings fades away and vanishes, and this makes him disenchanted towards them. Living like this, he starts relinquishing his grip from holding on to anything and keeps giving up. Giving up. The toe, Venerable Mahamoggallana's toe, shaking this whole vast palace. In other words, with every tap of the toe onto the palace, he was saying to Sakka, give it up. Give up this craziness. What are you talking about? Like, oh, this is to commemorate this palace, to commemorate a war, this, a victory. What is this nonsense? It's like somebody who drives a very late model Mercedes with a license plate that they paid extra for, this and that. Look at this. They park it outside, they go to restaurants or this and that. Look at this. This is my Vijayanta palace right here. Nonsense. Oh, look at me where I'm dressing. You know, I had someone I knew, he would only like to dress up in a Gucci suit. $2,000 suit was not good for him, so it had to be over $4,000 at least. Some people like to go to very expensive restaurants, thinking that that's where they actually will eat good food. Rubbish. Give it up. By not grabbing onto anything, thus, he no longer becomes anxious, neither restless nor agitated. This is key. If you're being anxious, if you're being agitated, in whatever it is, you know you're not practicing the Dhamma. That is not Dhamma. It might actually convince you that this is Dhamma related. You're fighting with yourself in your head, which is creating heat, which is creating agitation in the mind. Watch out, that's not the Dhamma. Drop it. It's not the Dhamma. Dhamma will actually be the opposite. It's non-anxiety causing. It doesn't create agitation. It doesn't create friction. Upekkha and agitation cannot coexist. They cannot. So when you give up, though, those feelings, you're giving up your attachments to them, preferring the good over the bad feeling. How is that Dhamma? Because there's a preference. You're liking something over something else. Well, guess what? That liking of something else will change in the next second. Because you are liking and holding on to what? Anicca. Expecting anicca to be permanent. How is that? That's the definition of insanity. But that's what the Patujana does. They look at anicca, something that is impermanent, wanting to find or sneakily go in there, look for, the treasure hunt for something permanent within anicca. How is that possible? That's what we do. Craziness. That's what Lord Buddha also calls people, beings. He says people are crazy. He says that. And by not becoming agitated anymore, he experiences the ultimate relief that is Nibbana. Nibbana is relief. It's cooling. Imagine you're burning, now it's cooling. At that instance, the bhikkhu comes to know with his direct understanding, birth is now finally destroyed. The holy life has been fully lived with its highest goal achieved. Now there is no more returning to any state of becoming. And the Blessed One continued, this King of Devas briefly describes the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect, having reached the pinnacle of ultimate safety. That is the goal of the holy life, and thereby winning freedom from bondage once and for all. He is the one recognized as the very best among both devas and humans. And then, rejoicing and being delighted by the words spoken thus by the Blessed One, I bowed respectfully to the teacher, and after circumambulating and keeping him to my right, I suddenly vanished from there. So this is Sakka giving the full report. Good Sir Moggallana, this is how the Blessed One briefly explained the manner in which the bhikkhu, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect. Then, after delighting and agreeing with the words of Sakka, the King of Devas, just like a strong and agile person would quickly extend or flex his bent arm or bend his stretched arm, so too the Venerable Maha Moggallana disappeared from the presence of the Devas of the 33 and reappeared in the Pubba monastery at the palace of Megada's mother in the eastern park of Savatthi. Soon after the Venerable Maha Moggallana had left, the attendant Devas of Sakka, the King of Devas, approached and said this to their ruler. Lord, was that the Blessed One, your teacher? Because he shook the whole palace. You know, he must be powerful, so it must be the teacher. He says, no, dear ones, he is not the Blessed One, our teacher. He is one. He is one of my companions in the holy life, the Venerable Maha Moggallana. Now when he says he is one of my companions in the holy life, that places him as one of the Arya Sangha members. Meaning he is also claiming here, declaring that he is a noble disciple. Because he was a Sotapanna. He's claiming, he's declaring that. So, Lord, and then they say, Lord, you are so fortunate, so very blessed. If your fellow companion in the holy life is so powerful and mighty, what then could be said about your teacher? If he's that powerful? Whoa! Then the Venerable Maha Moggallana approached the Blessed One, and after paying his respects, he sat down to one side and said to the Blessed One. So here he repeats everything. In the sutta, I have it all, and this will be uploaded later on because I've been doing these suttas, translations as I go throughout these retreats, this retreat. So I haven't had a chance to upload them yet. But you will get the full thing. So I'm just going to be jumping through because I'm saving my throat, my voice. So, and then he explains exactly what he did, the shaking of the palace and all that. And but the way he asks is very important. Venerable Maha, even though he was there earlier when Sakka was there, he says, Bhante, this is Venerable Maha asking the question to report, to give him the full report. He says, Bhante, does the Blessed One remember explaining to a certain well-known ruler of Devas on how the bhikkhu, who having destroyed craving would have liberated himself and become perfect, having reached the pinnacle of ultimate safety, that is the goal of the holy life, and thereby winning freedom from bondage once and for all, the one recognized as the very best among both devas and humans. And Lord Buddha says, indeed, Moggallana, I do remember. For earlier, Sakka, the king of devas, approached and worshipped me and then stood to one side and asked. So, Lord Buddha, he has to say every single thing that he had said to Sakka again. Because remember, this was the way that for centuries monks were passing the information, the suttas, to others, to other traditions, to other generations. So the more of repetition there was, the more it would become ingrained in the mind. And if there's any mistakes, any misspoken word, it would become obvious the second time the paragraph is repeated. So they would have to correct it, because in this sutta it's repeated at least 3 times, this big chunk. So, and it's sad that many translators, if not all of them out there in the world, they are omitting this. Anytime they come across a repetition, they say, okay, we just put ellipses and that's the end of the story, because my life is too busy. Like Sakka. I have other things to do. What do you have other things to do? You're a bhikkhu. Sit down and write those things. And plus, you can just copy and paste it, okay? Wasn't a big deal. It's just the laziness that we have in this time period, I guess, as human beings. Perhaps that's it. But it's also highly disrespectful of the Dhamma. Lord Buddha never used ... Or, yeah, I've said that in Buddha. Okay, next. Because you don't know, the second or third time you say it, that might land. Years ago when I was a high school teacher, I had a board that was at least twice the length of this in the classroom. And I would have my students, when I would teach them, let's say, whether it was biology or any of the general sciences, astronomy, things like that, I would have each of the questions written on the board. I would write it as I was saying it, with my back to them. But guess what? They weren't just sitting there idly just listening. Oh no! They had to get their notebooks out and they had to be writing. And if they didn't, well, they all did. They had to. Otherwise it would be punishment coming up next. Disciplinary action. So anyhow, I would write those whole things. So I would say it, I would write it. That's already 2. As the person is writing it, they're seeing it, and they're repeating it in their head, and they're writing it. That's at least 5 times. The thing is being repeated. So if they're being absent-minded, they're playing, they're doing something, they're goofing around, or whatever, they might miss the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th maybe, but there's a chance that the 5th repetition could land. I mean, that's how we learned languages. I used to hate it in classroom, elementary class, when A, B, C, or kindergarten, whatever it was, or words. You had to repeat it, and sentences. But that's how your brain learns. And if we have learned all those things and not use all those skills to learn the Dhamma, then it's a wasted life, as far as I'm concerned. Wasted life. So Lord Buddha explains all of that. And then it ends, that is how I remember explaining briefly to Sakka, king of Devas, the manner in which the bhikkhu who, having destroyed craving, has liberated himself and become perfect. This is what the Blessed One said, and the Venerable Maha was delighted in listening to the words of the Blessed One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I hope it was an inspiring sutta for you as well. It has many meanings, especially that phrase, that sentence. Nothing is worth clinging to. You live your life, you get into relationships, you accomplish things. You get somewhere in life. Maybe you have things, possessions, whatever, or positions. And everything in life trains you, teaches you that you must have something. You must have something. And if you don't have something, then you're wasting a life. So it is earlier I was saying a few days ago how we're going against the stream, the current that is being taught to us from a very young age. So the Dhamma forces you to realign your priorities. It's very difficult. So no wonder when you come to a retreat or when you sit at home to meditate, you have to bring in those methods of functioning, the tools that you've been using to gain and to grab and to do things while you're trying to understand the Dhamma, which is the opposite of all those things. So it teaches you the giving up, the opposite of what life teaches you. People teach you, society teaches you. Meanwhile, life, if you notice, you will lose people around you. Friendships, your youth, things. Growing up in Lebanon as a young child, I saw things drop from my life, vanish from my life. First it was my body. Suddenly I looked and I was missing body parts that were there yesterday. I had to teach myself how to walk. I didn't have, now the skill of walking was gone. I didn't have the ability to even put my legs down from the bed. I spent months in bed. I couldn't, because the moment I let my legs hang from the edge of the bed, the pain would shoot up straight to my right temple, where there was a shrapnel that was caught there, that was left there, because they couldn't touch it, because it was too dangerous. Pain, unbelievable pain, as if somebody took a sharp thing and was pushing through into your skull. So I couldn't, until slowly I got, but I lost things. It was a unique situation. It was not a unique situation because everyone else was losing something. I would look at my father's hair and it would be changing. It would have gray hair and he would start dyeing it, coloring it, and my mother hated it. He used to have a mustache and he would color, dye that, and she was hating that. So he started shaving the mustache to hide it, or hide from it, or the fact that he was getting old. Meanwhile, at school, I was seeing, because it was a war-torn country, I was losing friends that I had really worked hard to develop a relationship with, intimacy with. They were gone. Suddenly you would hear, next week we're leaving. Where are you going? Oh, we're leaving the country because it's getting worse and worse. And poof, gone. But we were together since kindergarten. Gone. 4, 5, 6 years of life, gone. Now you have to go and reestablish a relationship. And then your grandmother dies. And this and that. So life this is just one example, just one human being here. But in your case, you can have so many other examples that you can contribute to the fact that things are changing. You know this. So life also has been teaching you. It's society that's coming and trying to teach you something else. Non-essential, looking at it as essential, right? In the Dhammapada verses we say every morning. That's what we have to fix. We must look at the essential and see it as essential. What is essential? Knowing that nothing stays the same. That's big. That means the person has stopped lying to themselves. So when you are here, I see you here and participating in an intensive retreat like this, what I see is a group of human beings who are saying, I'm seeing the essential as essential and I'm trying to do something about it. But that also involves you giving up a lot. You have to. You're going to cry. That's okay. It's liberating. You will feel different. You will feel strange at times, but that's all part of the transformation. It's called a metamorphosis. I've seen sometimes caterpillars building a cocoon in front of my door. Actually, when I was briefly staying at another room at the center, somebody had offered a plant, a tropical plant because I was like, I need plants in this place. I need to, because there's not air, So several people brought plants, and one of the plants, I was like, every morning I would get up and I would see on the ground pieces of leaves on the ground that I couldn't explain. I was like, where is this? I'm wiping, I'm cleaning it, I'm sweeping it. And then I looked up and I was like I saw one of the leaves moving. I turned the leaf over and I saw that there was a caterpillar busy at work, fattening itself so it can act. And I saw that it was actually also building a cocoon on the side of the leaf. And later that day I saw that it had gone inside the cocoon and locked itself inside. So that's what you're doing. It's a transformation. It requires effort, but the caterpillar has done its job. It stays in the cocoon. It doesn't continue doing things, bringing stuff, leaving the cocoon and going and saying, I have to now apply this. I have to go and bring in other techniques that I've learned in the past. I have to squeeze that in there. No. The food is being provided, the place is here, and the teachings are here. All you have to do is become intimate with yourself and go along with it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So long as you're practicing the Dhamma, nothing can touch you. Nothing can touch you. For how long are you going to continue searching outside of you? It's not there. The note that I had asked about Maha, earlier today, the question came up about Maha. And whether Maha could one day, can come to his senses and listen to the Dhamma, enough so that he could be an arahant. Is it possible? Well, I thought you would never ask, because it has to do with Venerable Maha. Years after he became an arahant, he was sitting in his kuti meditating. And Maha is known to come and taunt even Lord Buddha. I mean, that's how incorrigible the guy is. It's like, it never gives up. It's like an annoying little brat. Always. It's the Buddha. I mean, come on. What are you trying to... It's impossible, but he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand. He still has hope that the arahant will want to think about sex or have sex or crave something. It doesn't work. You go through stages until the mind is so purified that it cannot even ponder that possibility. It's impossible. So what Mara does is tries to somehow get rid of you, or hurt you, or punish you, because you are an anomaly for Mara, because Mara, everybody belongs to Mara. If you've seen the movie Matrix, the first one especially, everybody's connected to the system. Everybody is connected to the Matrix. They can easily flip. They can easily, a friend can become a foe in an instant. They can kill you. An old lady could turn around and kill you. Kind little, that's in the movie theme, you know? But I use the reference because that's the whole system that we are. We are in a matrix. And Mara runs the show, except for those who have unplugged themselves. And that is an arhat. And Lord Buddha was number one. So, in one of his futile attempts, Mara comes to Venerable Mahamoggallana's kuti. As Venerable Mahamoggallana is sitting to meditate, he enters his belly, into his intestines. But it's not like you using the spiritual friend putting him in your heart, in case you're wondering. Mara goes straight into his gut and starts giving him cramps, terrible cramps, pain in his gut, in his intestines. This is Venerable Mahamoggallana. That is strange. It feels like I have few kilos of something, like as if I've eaten several alms bowls full of beans. He has this intense gas, intense tension, pain in his gut. He says, that is strange. This is not supposed to be happening. And he checks with his psychic abilities, and he sees, Mara's hiding there. Meanwhile, Mara's thinking there's no way anyone can know I'm here, because I'm so small, I've hidden myself and I'm causing headache. And he says, Mara, get out. I can see you. You're there. Get out of my body. And at first, Mara says, there's no way. He's like, He calls him out again, and he comes out. And now he goes and stands next to the door, invisible. Not to Venerable Mahamoggallana. He could see what Sakka is doing in his Vijayanta palace, when, Rajgir. He could see Mara was trying to hide in front of him. He says, what are you doing? I could see you. He says, no, you can't see me. No human can see me. He says, I can see you. I'm no mere human. And then Venerable Mahamoggallana has compassion towards Mara. And he says, I will tell you something. Eons ago, he says, eons ago, I was Mara. Venerable Mahamoggallana was Mara. And he says, you who call yourself Mara, the ruler of the cosmos, you used to be my nephew. Nephew. I was your uncle. And Mara doesn't know what to do with that. He doesn't have the wisdom. But eons. So yes, absolutely, Mara can become an arhat. Look at Venerable Mahamoggallana. So, but that doesn't mean that in the midst of him creating all these debacles, he's going to have a change of heart. That's not how it works. Because Mara will have to face his actions, just like everyone else, and land in the hell realms for a very, very long time. Very long time. Because he enjoys extending your stay in samsara. He gets a kick out of it. He enjoys that. It's just like a naughty little child, you know. But one good thing that we know from the suttas is that when you call out Mara's name, he cannot lie. He cannot continue on a lie if you have identified him. Once there was a man, a poor man, and he attains Sotapatti. He becomes a stream runner. And he comes home to his kuti, to his home actually. And he was studying with Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha was teaching him. Suddenly there's a knock on the door. He opens the door, and who's standing in front of him? Buddha, Lord Buddha. Well, at least what appears to be Lord Buddha. And he says, my son, I have, the thing that I was talking about there, what I said about, you know, Four Noble Truths, this and that, you know, 5 aggregates, actually, there's some flaws in that theory. There's like some things that, you know, I wasn't correct in that. So basically trying to convince him that his whole ground is shaky, this person. The attainment that he has is false. But the thing happens when the person becomes a Sotapanna, there's such a level of certainty that you would rather die than give that up. In a heartbeat. No one can convince you otherwise. To the point where he turns to this person who looks like the Buddha, talking like the Buddha, glowing like the Buddha, and he says, "You're not Lord Buddha, my teacher," he says. "Are you Mara?" And he cannot lie. When you call him out, he immediately disappears. And that's a good thing. So, if you find yourself in a situation, and it's not like Mara's visiting people, you know, it doesn't happen. So don't try to think that that's happening all the time, you know. It's mostly your own ideas, your own thoughts. That's what we have to watch out. Okay? So call them out. Is this Dhamma? How is this helping me now? That's another way of addressing it. How is this helping me now? My thinking, my constant agitation about this, my constantly rehashing and going back into my past and coming up with my thoughts and my memories and excuses and story upon story. How is this helping me now? Is it? It's not? We know what to do. Patini Sagga. Drop the sandbag. Pick it up. Drop it. When you see something beautiful, something ugly, something neutral, yeah, it's the 6 senses. You can't help it. So long as you're alive, you're going to have 6 senses bringing you data. Okay, but don't hold on to it. Pick it up. Give it up. Give it up. That's what Lord Buddha taught Bahia, after all. And he was the fastest with that teaching to become an arahant. So I will stop here. If there's a question, one question, I will just, I don't know, even though my throat's hurting. Oh, good. Of course, yes. I was like expecting your hand to come up. Could you come and get the...
Bhante, just a short one. So you said Mara don't normally visit people. So apart from the Buddha...
Camera.
Oh, okay. Apart from the Buddha, who else does he visit? Just curious.
I just said Venerable Mahamoggalana, he visits Mahamoggalana, he visits, it's not a visit, it's from what I've seen in the suttas, what we witness in the suttas.
Everyone who's about to die.
Sometimes. But we see them in the suttas. You can take it with a grain of salt, But is that question even necessary? Not every question deserves an answer. Think about that. Yes.
Bhante, with regard to sanya, you've been mentioning it quite some time. I look at the Paticcasamuppada and I see all the Panchakandas, Nama-rupa, Vedana, Sankhara, as well as Vijnana. All the four has got a main link, but somehow the elusive sanya doesn't show up. Can you kind of give me a little bit more understanding about it? Thank you.
The formula of the Paticcasamuppada, dependent arising, the doctrine of the principle of causality that we have in the Dhamma, it has come to be identified, usually accepted as 12 links, but it's not just 12. In other suttas you actually will have it less. But when you unravel it, but people like to have compartmentalized, sectioned off principles, and especially something as vast as Paticcasamuppada, it really gets the most intellectual among us excited. To the point where you had for hundreds of years, if not a couple of thousand of years, people claiming that because they have been studying it or understand portions of it, that they must have attained arahantship. People recite it. You go to Myanmar, Burma, people have been reciting the Paticca, not just in Myanmar, you see it in Sri Lanka, you see it in Thailand, where people just recite, right? Avijja Pacchaya Sankhara, Sankhara Pacchaya. And it almost becomes like a song. And then you go and you have other teachers who elaborate. In this time period where there's a lot of heady people who love intellectualizing, I call it intellectual acrobatics. Because it's just that. It's sooner or later going to lead the person to treat it like an idol. Because it's like the sacrosanct teaching of the Dhamma for many people. Paticcasamuppada, if you know that. Because obviously in the suttas we also see that he who understands the Dhamma understands Paticcasamuppada, he who understands Paticcasamuppada sees Dhamma, etc. So there's some valid proof of that. But how we approach it, how we relate to it, that is the key. Now the reason why I say this is because we can become slaves to our understanding of these principles. That anything falls out of the teaching or is not included, like in the case of Sanya, within the 12-link schema, then there's a problem there. Is there? Or why should it not be there, included? Well, it is actually. It is found in the Nama group of the Nama-rupa. And most people actually misunderstand. You have majority of teachers go by the commentarial tradition and actually look at Nama having within it consciousness as a factor. It's not. Nama actually has within it Sanya. Nama, you have Nama and then you have Rupa. Rupa is, think of it as four primaries, and the food and the drink and the nourishment that you get from a mother and father. Those are included in the Rupa, the corporeality, the physicality of this entity we call a human being. or a deva, or whatever being. They also have their nama rupa. But nama is often neglected. Most people don't know what nama is. We just say name and form, and we move from there, and that's it. That's the end of the story. But it's not. It's so rich. In fact, if you understand nama rupa, you also will understand vijnana. They go like this.
Conceptual.
Vijnana is not conceptual.
Nama as in mind concepts.
Vijnana, you can see it as sense awareness. Sense awareness. 6 senses, remember? There needs to be that consciousness taken. You have the salayatanas, you have the object, the organ, and the object that this organ perceives, the eye and the form. Because of these two coming together, that's when you have consciousness. When teachers go ahead and come up with their own, they take their poetic license and start coming up with their own terminology as they see fit, which is what's been happening for the last 20, 30 years in the Buddhist world. The student is caught. On one hand you have the suttas, on the other hand you have teachers presenting different things. Well, I lost about 20 years of my life because I was caught in that tug of war. Often the suttas would lose in my battles because I would go with Visuddhimagga or some Abhidhamma or some teacher, some commentarial tradition, because they were more relevant to me, because they were presenting me what seemed like more data. Because the suttas were like too out there, there's too open-ended, too less concretized, compartmentalized. Until I actually saw that that's not the case at all. So coming back to nama, you have Vedana, you have Sanya, you have Sanchetana, you have Chetana, intention, which we never talk about. Yeah. I gave a talk a few weeks ago to my other international group on that. On the Sutta, Sanchetana Sutta. But we don't stop there. 2 other factors get to be missed out entirely in the Nama group. And those are Yoniso Manasikara, wise attention. What Bhante Nyananda calls radical attention. Or wise reflection. And what's number 5? Contact. Passa, yes. So you have to, if you use your intellectual, again, ways of left brain, I call it, left brain functioning and interpreting of the world around you or concepts, you're going to get in trouble. Because that part of the brain is going to come in and say, wait a minute, why does passa shows up here in the nama group and then there's a passa over there? That is a futile way of thinking, because that, I was saying this to someone else the other day. What you have today are a bunch of scholars during the last 50 years of the Dhamma. Very well-known names, some of them you know probably even personally, maybe. You've known them. That have been very top-heavy on the intellectual side, meaning left brain. So long as you're using the left brain, you will never understand the Dhamma. Never. Underscore, bold letters, italics, however you want it. Never understand the Dhamma. So long as you're using the left brain. But that's what today's society is going towards. That's why I said yesterday how human beings are being predicted by some very loud philosophers and things as a very almost obsolete. Robots will be showing up because they see us as nothing more than machines. And that is the fruit, the outcome of thinking with the left brain, thanks to that. And you have many Buddhist scholars, many monks even, who have subscribed to that way of thinking, that reductionist, mechanistic way of looking at a human being. Reductionistic, which is terrible. Terrible. Lord Buddha was not a reductionist. So in order for you to understand the Dhamma, especially Paticca you need the right brain. Left brain understands parts very well. It doesn't understand relationships between the parts. Remember relationships? The bhikkhu understand the relationships? The relationships between the links must be understood. You need to see that the Four Noble Truths are found within each of the links. Each of the links have all the Four Noble Truths in them. How many people do you see talk about that? It's in the suttas, I'm not making anything up. But you have a lot of avidya today, a lot of ego. Everybody wants to have their name up there in big letters, golden letters. There's like, and have books written on this. Meanwhile, they're not entering through the doorway to become arahants themselves, neither are they opening the doors for other people to become arahants. That's why I'm not impressed when someone comes and says, I am so-and-so's student. Okay, so, big deal. Was your teacher an arahant? Did you become an arahant? If he was or not, it doesn't matter. Are you an arahant? Are you on the way to becoming an arahant? Are you sotapanna yet? Or you're not? Okay. Then something is being done that is not getting you to the results that Lord Buddha expects from you. That's why we need to relinquish, give up what has not worked. Don't be afraid. See how beautiful that smile is. It's a release. It's a release. It's like, oof. So that's what we need to be doing constantly. So I hope that answers your question. And we will stop here. Let us do transfer of merits. Ākāsatthā ca Bhūmātha Devānāgamahittika Puñyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakhantu Lokasāsanam. Ākāsatthā ca Bhūmātha Devānāgamahittika Puñyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakhantu Desanam. Ākāsatthā ca Bhūmātha Devānāgamahittika Punyantam anumoditva chiram rakhantu mam param.